Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Results Grassroots Conference call for May 2022. For anyone for whom this is their first monthly Grassroots Conference call, my name's Aaron Oxley. I'm the Executive Director of Results UK, and I'd like to officially welcome you to the call tonight. Hope you're going to find the discussion interesting and inspiring, and really something that can help in our collective advocacy in support of an organization called the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, TB, and Malaria, which does exactly what it says on the tin and more. But before we get into that, I'm going to go through all the usual housekeeping messages. We are recording the call, and we're going to post the recording on our website for anyone who's missed it to watch later. So please feel free to turn your video off if you'd rather not be in the recording. That's totally fine. We're also going to post any links or resources that have been shared in the chat box during the call there as well. So you'll be able to find that back. We're using automatic captions, which you should be able to turn on and off with the Zoom bar at the bottom of the screen. Do keep yourself muted during the call. If you've got a question or a comment, go ahead and drop that in the chat box, as people will be watching that and we'll try to respond there or in the main call. Now, if you're new, please feel free to introduce yourself, either by turning on your microphone and saying hello, or you could use the chat box. We'd love to hear where you're calling in from, but also absolutely fine not to introduce yourself if you'd prefer not to do that. Do we have anyone new today that wants to say hi? So, all veterans, so why don't we jump straight in then? I'm going to start, as always, with an update on what's happening in the world of international development and how it affects the work of Results. Last week, it was World Immunization Week, so I'm going to start with an update on polio. Now, many of you took action earlier this year to call on the UK to honour its pledge to the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, that's GPEI for short. While the replies from the government make it sound unlikely that the existing funding commitment for the following years will be kept, we do hope that there's soon going to be another moment to raise support and funding for global efforts to eradicate polio. That's partly because last week, the GPEI launched their new investment case to fund its 2022 to 2026 strategy. Now, if that's fully supported, it's going to see the vaccination of 370 million children annually for the next 5 years, and for the continuation of global surveillance activities for polio and other diseases in 50 countries. The recent upsetting news that a boy in Pakistan was paralyzed as a result of wild polio, the first case detected in over a year, reminds us of why we must continue to urge the UK to play its part in global efforts to completely eradicate this disease. It doesn't have to be this way. Elsewhere, Tajikistan became the first country to close down an outbreak of circulating vaccine-derived poliovirus type 2. This is partly due to the use of an innovative new polio vaccine, which is a key part of the GPEI's strategy and shows that when the resources are available, the virus can be beaten. We're going to put some links in the chat just now so you can see the articles on all of that news in detail. GPEI's work and the work of partners, countries, and health volunteers worldwide not only takes the world one step closer to eradicating polio, but have also been crucial to tackling COVID-19 and other health issues. In a recent webinar series coordinated by Results with some other organizations, we've heard from people around the world about how lessons from existing health and immunization systems can be applied to tackle the COVID pandemic and vice versa. That's something that Results has long said, and it shows that investments in one area of health have positive ripple effects on a country's health system and healthcare, and the more you focus on making that happen, the more it will. You can read a bit more about this in our World Immunization Week blog, which reflects on all the immunization-related advocacy work that we do. Now, one thing we've really been pushing for to help tackle the COVID-19 pandemic is equal access to COVID-19 vaccinations worldwide. Unfortunately, despite a lot of advocacy work by campaigners and organizations, the UK government has not been stepping up in quite the way we hoped. In the end, the government did decide to count donated COVID-19 vaccines as official development assistance. Essentially, this means that the UK, which was one of many high-income countries that hoarded vaccines, donated its excess vaccines to countries who faced challenges buying them in the first place, and then counted the cost of these excess vaccines as part of the already slashed official development assistance budget. To make this clear, the UK bought vaccines worth £100 million for your own use, then didn't use them and donated them instead, and accounted for that cost within the ODA budget. We are at least relieved that the cost of the vaccines was counted at was indeed the actual cost that the government bought them for. As if you remember from previous calls, there was a real fear that the original cost of the vaccines could have been artificially inflated when accounting for the price of donation, which would have meant even more chipped away from the available budget. Yet ultimately, the book value of these donations was set at the £100 million we paid. We know that could have been spent in smarter, effective, and more moral ways. But I'd like to think the scrutiny that we all brought to bear on that made sure that they didn't do any accounting trickery. And meanwhile, the true impact of the cuts to the aid budget only just really starting to be made clear and public. An official audit found that the cuts were rushed with little consultation and transparency. And according to a Guardian article, the short time scale between the cuts being decided and made meant that, and I quote, the FCDO could not carry out a thorough review of the impact the cuts would have, or whether the changes in spending would be good value for money, the report concluded, end of the quote. Some recently released statistics also provide provisional data on how the ODA budget was spent in 2021, which has raised some big concerns. Rather than try and expand on all these points, I really encourage you to read an article by Bond. It's the apex body for our sector. That explains the various findings from the data, but to give you some idea of what's in the article, here are the headlines. The overall cuts to UK aid were huge. Bilateral programs, that's our country government directly to another country government, they were the most impacted. Africa was hit the hardest. What was differed programming, and that was now in the FCDO, saw the biggest cuts, with the Home Office's budget increasing. And even after this report, there's still so much more to know. We're going to put the link in the chat and think it's a great read to look a little bit deeper into all these headline findings. But what all of this really shows when you get right down to it is that we need to keep advocating for the ODA budget to return to 0.7% of gross national income as soon as possible. And for that pot of money to be spent as effectively as possible and on things that really make a difference. We're currently waiting on tenterhooks for the upcoming International Development Strategy. It's going to be published by the government later in May. That's going to be a good indicator of what they're treating as priorities for upcoming years. And as soon as it's out, we're going to be working on understanding it in detail and what it means for our work and how we advocate on the different issues that we care about. So hopefully we'll have an update for you on all of that next month. One last thing to wrap up with is the Police, Crime and Sentencing Bill. As many of you may be aware, this bill has unfortunately included extremely concerning elements that allow police to have unprecedented powers to restrict our right to protest. This is really disappointing and is by no means the only concerning element of the bill. Yet, thanks to the work of many people and organizations around the country, some of the most draconian elements of the bill have been removed. Yet we'll all need to be thinking about what these new government approaches mean for our advocacy and for safe and effective campaigning. There's some things we think you need to know. We're going to be bringing that to you in detail. On a lighter note, though, I'm going to now hand over to Ruthie for this month's roundup to hear about all of your activity.
Thank you, Aaron. So I think most of you know me, but just in case, I'm Ruthie, Campaigns and Communications Officer. So I'm stepping in for Tanya, who's the campaigns coordinator, who unfortunately couldn't make it tonight, but kindly wrote these notes, so I won't take all the credit. But firstly, just a big thank you to everyone who contacted their MP last month and has managed to talk to them already about the Global Fund to fight AIDS, TB and malaria. And we know some of you have meetings coming up or have got plans to contact your MP. So that's great. And as the call goes on, hopefully you'll get some more ideas and advice on how to do that as well. A bit later, we'll hear from Ricky and Karen in Cheshire, who recently met their MP. But for now, I just wanted to quickly remind everyone that we have quite a few campaign guides on our website, and they're linked to in this month's action materials as well. So for example, we've got campaign guide on how to have an effective meeting with your MP, a draft agenda, as well as a guide on the Global Fund itself. So as well as meeting MPs, some of you have been writing blogs and making social media content, and the Brighton group have recently been reigniting their social media and creating some brilliant and eye-catching content. So I'm going to briefly hand over to the Brighton room, the Brighton group, to hear about that content, and also about a blog that Noor wrote explaining the importance of the holy month of Ramadan on international development. So over to you, Brighton.
Hi. So much to say hi. So Eden Bright, firstly, just to everyone. So as Ruthie said, I wrote a blog this month about Ramadan, and I tied it in with the contribution that Islam has on international development, specifically in the month. So it had some really great statistics in there about the contribution financially, but also just nice things to do for people during the month of Ramadan, and always, just as a reminder and a lesson for people. So for example, I did a bit of research into it, and during 2020, in the month of Ramadan alone, Muslims donated £150 million to international development causes, and that's only in the UK, which is such an amazing statistic, and it really highlights how much of an impact Islam and the teachings of Islam and the emphasis on charity has on international development. I also really wanted to highlight the fact that Islam is so much more than just fasting in terms of its conception of refraining from eating from sunrise to sunset, and there's so much more to it. Even just smiling at a stranger or giving someone directions, all things like that are considered something called sadaqah, which is a type of charity in Islam. So where you have the financial, sorry, I'm like journing on about it now, feel free to read the blog, but where you have the financial obligation to donate 2.5% of your annual savings, there's also the other half of it that understands that not everyone can afford to do that, and it's just the simple things of helping people when and where you can. So I just wanted to spread the message of positivity. Hopefully people can relate that message to their own lives, whether or not they're Muslim, and just have a different outlook. So that's how we kind of related it back to results, with helping out where and when you can. But yes, that had been communicated on our socials, which Iman will talk you through.
Hi, I'm Iman. I'm on the social media team. So I really wanted to get involved on the social media because I believe it's a tool that can be used greatly, and it's I don't think it's used enough by a lot of people who maybe are trying to advocate more. It can be used to mobilize a lot of young people, and that can be seen in our team where people have joined from using the social media. So related to Noor's blog, we just made an infographic with the key details, so about how £150 million was raised in Ramadan last year. We've done a post summarizing how to talk to your MP, so it's a little infographic. We've done that. We've tried to raise awareness on Brighton-based charities that help the homeless, and are just trying to be quite active and relevant to whatever causes that have been going on in the world. Thanks.
Amazing, thank you. We've put the link to the blog in the chat, and I would really recommend reading it. And also I'll dig out, or if you want to share the socials, you might get some more followers for other people on the call. But yeah, it's been really good to see your content, and kind of inspired us as well to kickstart the Results Instagram page. So that's a work in progress. So next I want to flag that Results Education in the US will be holding their annual international conference online this year, which you and results advocates all around the world are warmly invited and encouraged to attend. So the conference will be on the weekend of June 4th and 5th, and there'll be some great speakers, including author and Professor Jelani Cobb of The New Yorker as the keynote, and a range of different sessions. So as I said, that's the international conference. arranged by our partners in the US, but for everyone to drop in to the sessions that suit you and also most convenient with time differences. But yeah, take a look at the link in the chat, and if you have any questions about attending, just let us know. Now, an important process going on at Results at the moment is refreshing our strategy for the period 2023 to 2030. So this is a time for us to reflect on what Results could and should be doing, and also how. So we'd like to warmly invite you all to come along to our Grassroots Network strategy session on Thursday, 12th of May, 7 till 8:30 p.m, and that'll be online. So it's a chance for you to feed into the strategy process at a really important stage. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, experiences, and opinions on the priorities that we should work on, and also how to work on them. And that would be, as I said, for the period 2023 to 2030, so right up until when the Sustainable Development Goals aim to be achieved. And everyone's welcome, so whether you've been involved with Results for years or weeks or days, would love to have your input on our strategy. So you can sign up using the link in the chat, and as I said, that's next Thursday on the 12th of May. And another important opportunity for you to have your say in how Results works and what we do is to join the Board of Trustees. So every 2 years, a Grassroots trustee is elected. So that's someone like you from the Grassroots Network who sits on the board. And being a Grassroots trustee is a great way to make a meaningful difference to Results, learn valuable skills, and work with some brilliant people as well, including fellow board members. So we'll be sending an email out later this week with information on that strategy session and how to become, put yourself forward for the Grassroots trustee. And then elections for that will take place up to the National Conference. So the National Conference, that's the Results UK National Conference, will take place 2nd and 3rd of July, so Saturday and Sunday. And it's hybrid, so you can join online or in person at the venue in London called Friends House. And we have a few speakers now confirmed from all across the world. So we're really taking a global approach to this year's theme, which is the power in all our voices. And the conference website's up, so you can see the full agenda and the speakers that we've already announced there, which include Irungu Horton, who is known as an inspirational speaker and written his own book and is currently the Executive Director of Amnesty in Kenya. Samaya Mustafa, who are both climate activists and have founded their own organisations in Kenya and Uganda respectively, and they'll be on a panel discussion called Excluded Voices and COP26, so looking at which voices were and weren't included in the climate summit last year. And then we have a session on the Global Fund where we'll hear from Handa, who is a Global Fund advocate and contracted TB when she was 15 and wants to share her personal experience to show the human impact of the Global Fund on people's lives. So it would be great to see as many of you as possible, either in person or online. The tickets for joining in person are limited, so if you'd like to come along to London and meet people face to face, then please make sure you've reserved your free ticket, all tickets are free there. And yeah, we'll hopefully see you in July. So on that note, I'll hand back to you, Aaron.
Thanks, Ruthie. Thanks for leading us through all those updates. And thank you to everybody around the whole network that has all the things that you've done to move all of our issues forward. It really does make a big difference. Now, before we go on, I want to explain how and why this call is going to be a little different to normal. If you're not familiar with Results Grassroots Conference calls, our usual format is to hear from a guest speaker who's an expert on the focus issue area that we're campaigning on that month, and then you get a chance to ask them questions. In the last 2 months, we've been focusing on raising awareness of TB and kickstarting our 2022 advocacy on the replenishment of the Global Fund to fight AIDS, TB and malaria. We've had 2 great expert speakers to share their knowledge on those topics and why our advocacy matters. If you weren't able to join us for those, They're a great watch. We're going to put the recording to them and the blogs attached to them into the chat just now. So that's March and April. Now, it's a big ask this time. We're asking for 1.8 billion with a B pounds for the Global Fund over 3 years. It was 1.4 billion last time, so it's definitely not completely out of frame. But we know that it is actually not at all an easy time to be advocating for the UK government to make a large financial pledge to global health organisations. And some of you have been coming back to us with some very important and tough questions about how best to take action to raise support for the Global Fund. So on this call, we're going to focus on what we as Results are doing to advocate and how we could take action this month in the run-up to the Global Fund's replenishment conference in autumn this year. We've got a few folks with us tonight. We've got Clare, who's our Policy Advocacy Officer on TB, and Vinny, who's our Senior Parliamentary Advocacy Officer on TB. Both of them are on the call to hear about what policy and parliamentary advocacy work they've been up to recently. And then we're going to go into breakouts so you can chat about your grassroots advocacy and also to share some tips and answer questions and really get into a bit of dialogue about how to engage your MP. Hopefully you've all read the action material, so I don't need to go into too much detail about the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria, but just in case, let me quickly give you the highlights package. The Global Fund exists because before COVID, tuberculosis was actually the deadliest infectious disease in the world, killing more than 1.5 million people a year. And a few years before TB was overtaken by COVID, TB itself had overtaken HIV/AIDS, AIDS being previously the deadliest infectious disease in the world until that was passed by TB. Malaria used to kill over 1 million people a year, and the majority of those people were only children, and they were living in Africa. Now, it's the Global Fund that's had a huge role in changing the direction of all three of these epidemics, making literally billions of dollars of investments every year in fighting them and saving literally tens of millions of lives. Now, the Global Fund works by collecting funds from donor countries like the UK, the US, France, and others, and it makes those available to countries for their own programs, the things they decide to do to address the diseases. To give you some idea, the last UK contribution was £1.4 billion. It was made a little under 3 years ago. And with that money, we can all very proudly say that the UK saves a person's life every 2 minutes, day in, day out, whether you're awake, whether you're asleep. A person's life every 2 minutes just with the UK contribution. There are very few ways of spending money on global health and saving lives that are more efficient or more effective than through the Global Fund. And because of its unique governance model, it has civil society and communities of people affected by the diseases meaningfully represented right throughout its work, from the way that programs are designed at the country level, right through to its board and its governance. So it's not just the what does it do, but it's also the how it does it that's really great about the Global Fund. In short, we at Results are enormous fans of the Global Fund and its work, and we really want to make sure it can continue the fight against the three diseases. If you're not familiar with the Results model yet, we have our three main branches to our advocacy: the parliamentary team, the policy team, and the campaigns team. We believe this contribution of these three different kinds of advocacy, when combined together, makes all of them stronger and more effective. So it's great to have both Vinny and Clare on this call, as well as all of you who are experts in grassroots advocacy in your own right. But to dig a bit more into all this, we're going to kick off with some questions to our expert staff, Clare and Vinny. Clare and Vinny, can I ask you to introduce yourself briefly before you answer the question? Vinny, I believe the first one is from you, and it's coming to us from Birmingham tonight.
Shoot, Birmingham.
All right, sorry, I thought Vinny was going to introduce himself first. Okay, right. I'm Kenzie, one of the grassroots members from Birmingham. Right, my question to Vinny is that what is the importance of engaging with the parliamentarians on the Global Fund, and what has the results team, the parliamentary team, been doing to engage parliamentarians about the fund?
Yeah, good question. Good question. Thank you for that. So the important, I guess it might. Well, Vinny. Yes, introduce myself.
Introduce yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. That'll give me more time to think up my answer as well. So yeah, hi everyone. I'm Vinny. I've been at Results now for 9 or 10 months. I'll be coming up to my year anniversary shortly. But I work on the TV portfolio alongside Clare. I'm in London. I live in Tooting in London. People that know me say that I love Tooting a bit too much. But for the last sort of seven or 8 years, I've been working in and around Parliament in various jobs, whether that was running an MP's office or working for the civil service. But now I'm at Results working on the TV portfolio. The importance of engaging with parliamentarians, with the rabble, with the lemmings themselves. So ultimately, the decision for the Global Fund pledge is not a parliamentary one. It's one that's made by the government. So in some regards, the kind of wider question of why do we engage with parliamentarians speaks to a lot of why we engage with them on any issue, not just the Global Fund. Whilst it may not seem like it a lot of the time, MPs have a lot of power, for better or for worse. MPs actually have quite a great deal of individual influence if they apply themselves correctly and if they're a good MP. I will qualify that not all MPs are good, but the good ones are really effective at getting their points, not just to government, but to the places where they need to go. So the importance of engaging with parliamentarians is that parliamentarians spend a lot of time together, spend a lot of time with ministers. They bump into each other in the halls quite a lot. They have a lot of conversations in meetings, or they might find themselves at a conference together. And the conversation of an MP saying to a minister, I went to an event recently held by Results, or I spoke to a fantastic group of grassroots volunteers in my constituency from Results the other day, and they were telling me about this Global Fund. I'd never heard of it before, but it sounds really important. What are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? So you've got that end of the inexperienced ones, and then you've got the more grandy MPs who know exactly what they're on about, who've worked with the Global Fund over many years. They just need to hear the latest information from us. They just need to hear how much do they want, what are the key numbers, because I'll just take this straight to the government. They might write a letter, or they might, as I say, have those kind of conversations or join a debate. So I guess that's the importance of engaging with them. And then I'll briefly touch on the ways that we have been engaging with them the last sort of couple of months. We've sort of done about 6 months of engagement. So I guess two of the big ones which involve me and Claire directly is in my role as the APPG coordinator for Global TB. I recently wrote a report on behalf of the APPG, which is endorsed cross-party by MPs, and that called on the government to make a substantial contribution to the Global Fund. Claire is also about to release a similar policy-minded report. So just having authoritative documents from reputable sources that we can send straight to the government and go, we've got evidence-based. We're doing evidence-based policy here. We're making evidence-based decisions. We really think you should see this because it works. So we've been doing that as an organisation, but we've also been organising opportunities for parliamentarians to meet with officials from the Global Fund. So twice this year, parliamentarians have met with Peter Sands, who's the director or chief executive of the Global Fund. And so you can imagine that's pretty powerful. That if the head of one of the world's largest multilaterals is sitting in a room with development-minded MPs, cross-party, Conservative, SNP, Labour. They're really powerful conversations then, and people take a lot away from them and then take that back to the government. And I guess the final thing is we make use of parliamentary questions. So we harangue the government with questions asking, when's this coming out? What's going to be in it? When are you going to have a decision? Can we influence it? How's this going to impact it? Blah, 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 blah. And so we pepper the government with questions and sort of keep them on the back foot all the time. So yeah, that's probably enough.
Thanks, Vinny. You keep yourself very busy supporting parliamentarians to take action, which is, of course, what you as Grassroots do as well, and wearing a slightly different hat. Let's go over to Stort Valley for a question from Claire, who's also going to introduce herself. Do we have the question? Restore where they chopped off the call.
Yeah. No, I'm here. I'm just having my dinner. I can't predict when it arrives. So, Claire, are you there?
Hello, I am here. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Okay. What have you and the policy team been doing to engage policymakers and civil servants about the Global Fund?
Thanks, Peter. A very good question. I'll briefly introduce myself. My name is Clare Simons. I'm the Policy Advocacy Officer working on TB. So I work alongside Vinny very closely on our TB portfolio. I've been at Results for just over a year now, a year and a half-ish, and have absolutely loved being here. Loved every minute of it so far. And prior to this, I was in the civil service, and I've also worked across a couple of different charities. So having that civil service experience is really helpful in my role, engaging policymakers now on TB. So that is essentially what we as the policy team do. We engage, while Vinny's engaging with the sort of more public-facing parliamentarians, the MPs, the policy team engages more, I guess you'd say, behind the scenes. So with the civil servants who are working directly on these policies within government, and they are the people that are gathering evidence, generating recommendations, and speaking to their ministers about what direction the government should take on certain issues. So it's really important that we as a policy team build really strong relationships with civil servants, get them on our side, get them to sort of see things from the same perspective as us, so that we have a good route to ministers when they're making important decisions like this one around the Global Fund.
Can you give a few examples of your activities?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I guess the biggest thing we've been working on at the moment in terms of the Global Fund initially was around deciding what pledge we should ask for. So that is a piece of policy work that we did working with other civil society organisations. So we work really closely with organisations across the 3 diseases to have really in-depth conversations about the sort of political landscape, taking into account the Global Fund's investment case and the need that there is in the world for investment in the Global Fund, but also thinking about the UK political context, so the aid cuts particularly, and thinking about what sort of pledge might be realistic. So that's one big piece of policy work we've been doing with other organisations, is sitting down and thinking, what number are we asking policymakers for? And then in terms of engaging directly with civil servants, we are quite lucky that we have a really strong relationship with civil servants in the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. So we meet with them regularly to basically make the case for an ambitious pledge for the Global Fund. And they support us to advise us as to what arguments work with ministers. So particularly at the moment, we know that the Foreign Secretary is really interested in the response to Ukraine and also in ending preventable deaths of women and girls. So having that intel from civil servants supports us to develop messages which really make the case for an investment in the Global Fund that aligns with government priorities, but is also ambitious and recognises the need in the world for a really strong pledge. So a lot of that messaging we develop in the policy team. At the moment, for example, as Vinny mentioned earlier, I'm writing a report on the impact of the Global Fund in Ukraine. And we're hoping that that will be a really useful tool for civil servants so that they can use it in their conversations with the minister, but also for Vinny to use when he's engaging with parliamentarians to highlight how well an investment in the Global Fund aligns with the minister's priorities. Yeah, so I think those are sort of a few good examples of what the policy team does and how we work together with Vinny, and then obviously produce evidence and documents which you as campaigners hopefully can use in your engagement with MPs as well. So yeah, hopefully that.
Great response. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks both. Really solid questions and good follow-up. Hopefully that gives you guys a sense of the kind of the triangular way we tackle the advocacy, and how the work that you guys do is both supported by and supports the work of the various teams and results as well. And I think it's very clear from where I'm sitting that we are much stronger together. We're now going to be talking a bit more about the grassroots side. So I'm actually going to hand over to Ruthie to manage the next bit.
Thank you. So I've made breakout rooms, and the idea is that we'll connect up for the next sort of 10 to 15 minutes to chat about how we find engaging with our MP, share some tips and techniques. If you've never done it before, maybe hear from someone who has, and vice versa. So hopefully that will be quite useful and motivating. So the two breakouts are, I have a supportive MP and I have an unsupportive MP, which is quite a crude way of dividing it. And if you're not quite sure which one to go for where you think would be most useful. So in a minute, I'll open those up and you'll have a box on the screen where you can choose join group for those two categories. But before we go in the rooms, you may have remembered I said we'd hear from Ricky and Karen briefly. I moved this to here because I thought just before we go into discussing engaging with our MPs, we could have a bit of motivation from Cheshire, who have recently done just that. So yeah, how did your meeting go, Cheshire?
I thought it went well. Thank you very much for asking. I think we will in a minute click the, we don't have a very cooperative MP. And so we have, certainly during all the COVID stuff, not been able to meet with him at all. So to get a meeting with him was great. Why don't you talk about the cuddly viruses? They were great as well.
Okay, so we got 3 cuddly viruses for, this is, which one's this one? This is AIDS, HIV AIDS, but there's also a TB one and a malaria. I think Tara's going to show off malaria in a minute. So they're giant cuddly viruses. So we showed these during the meeting. We had a little presentation and people were wearing masks with the appropriate disease on before they started speaking. We took them off for speaking, so for clarity's sake. Oh, there's Tara. Oh, yes, she's got malaria. Yes. I'm not quite sure what's happened to cuddly malaria.
Malaria in a manner of speaking. But...
yeah. Oh, yeah, there it is. Yes. So we did this to get our MP's attention and just be a bit more memorable.
So our MP did what he always does, which is he says, write me a letter. And then he agreed to forward it to somebody in FCDO, and he seemed to know who he wanted to forward it to, which was the Africa minister. So to be honest, he'd probably have done that if we'd turned up without cuddly viruses. But one of the advantages, apart from it was fun for us, was that we got a photo of this, and it's something that we can kind of stick on social media quite effectively. So as a way of kind of letting other people locally know that this kind of malarkey is going on, and we actually can, have a bit of fun and influence our MP, perhaps influence the government. It's been quite helpful for us. So yeah, that's it, I think. Do you want to add anything, Tara?
Might be fun to share the photo. I'm just trying to find it.
Okay.
I think. Is it easy for you to find? I could try and find it.
Yeah, you keep chatting, or Ruthie keep chatting. I'll find it.
You should be able to find it and see it on the Results Cheshire Facebook page, because we've been posting it, and Ricky's been busy tweeting it and using it to try to get in the newspaper and use it to advertise our group. We're trying to get as much out of this as we can.
Yeah, I can put a link in or share the photo in a bit, but I'm just conscious of the time and keen that we go into the breakouts, and then the photo will be there when we come back. I say confidently. Let's see. So yeah, as I said, and thank you for that update as well, I'm going to open the rooms. So you should now see a box where you can click join group for either supportive or unsupportive.
Can you see it?
Not yet, no.
No.
You might have to click on the 3 buttons at the bottom that say more. And then under that, there should be an option breakout rooms. And then magically at that point, it should pop up, hopefully.
I can see people are joining, but I can't see the message you can see. So thank you, Aaron, for that.
I can't see. I'm not sure what I'm
Which one would you like to join, Peter? I can assign you to one. If anyone's struggling, I can put you in a group now. So if you want to just shout out where you'd like to go.
Ruthie, the bad relationship one, please.
So not supportive.
Yes.
Bad relationship makes sense. Was someone else calling?
Yeah, unsupportive for Pete.
Unsupportive.
Oh, I see a box.
We've got William.
Yes, I'm not sure what to do next. Is there something at the bottom, did you say?
I can do it for you. So would you like to go in a group and chat about your MP or MPs being supportive or when MPs are not supportive?
Yes. Well, supportive.
Supportive. Okay, I shall send you there. Janet? Oh, I can't actually hear you. Do you want to do a thumbs up for supportive MP and a thumbs down for unsupportive MP? Thumbs down, that's quite a big thumbs down. Okay, and we've got someone on a call. Can you hear? Okay, I think I'm going to have to hop into the group. I don't know if maybe you can have a chat.
Yeah, I can assign the last person. Thanks, Ruthie.
What happened to Jay and Sanjay?
I hope they'll appear back as if by magic.
Yeah, we thought we'd split the Cheshire gangs. We went to see about our MP being supportive, so that's where we went.
Good for you, Sanjay. Excellent. It's balance. That's what I like to see.
Balance. That's the word. Yes.
I did bring up an interesting on the wording of supportive is being. I can't remember the word you used for your MP. Is it dutiful?
He'll do his duty as in
uncooperative. It's the word I use, but yeah.
Yeah.
But it's quite common because our MP has a role for a long time. He was a whip and a secretary or whatever the term is. So one of the MPs that the Brighton group were talking about is a shadow cabinet minister. So I think it's quite common really to have an MP with a role that actually limits what they're even allowed to do, or certainly what they're willing to do. But even our MP will always write a letter to a minister on request, and we really love that as a strategy. So can always do something, can always do that at least.
Very good. Ruthie, I think you're running this, but aren't you?
Yeah, I was hoping we'd have a couple of minutes to feedback, but I think looking at the time, that might be a bit ambitious. So I'll probably hand back for a swift wrap up from you, Aaron, but I can try and write up some of the thoughts that were shared in our group, and perhaps if someone from the other group would be happy to do the same, we can put them in the blog. So hopefully we can capture some of the discussions that were had, so you can learn from the other groups, but also not spend past 9 o'clock on the results conference call that's supposed to finish at 9 o'clock. So on that note, I'll hand back to Aaron.
Thanks, Ruthie. Well, look, I mean, there's never enough time for these things. Do take a note, scroll up and grab from the chat, if you haven't clicked on them already, the links for the Results International Conference and the Results Conference, where you'll be able to spend a lot more time talking about this stuff, connecting with each other, learning from each other's experiences. We'd really love to see you at both of those different events in the coming months. I think I think I have to just wrap everything up. I'm so sorry. We will put a bunch of the thinking and the stuff that was shared in the groups. I do want to say a big shout out to the Brighton group for persisting, despite having some MPs that should probably be doing better than they are, from what it sounds. Keep it up, guys. And also, I love seeing a big group with lots of people in it, because it means, and you're doing it right, in that you're contacting more than just one MP, you're spreading yourselves out geographically, take a lot of strength from each other. It's exactly the right thing to be doing. So really, really good. But okay, I just want to thank Clare and Vinny for joining us this evening, sharing their contributions and advice. I hope everybody is feeling a bit inspired, a bit motivated, and perhaps a little less daunted about contacting your MP this month to try and arrange a meeting to discuss the Global Fund to fight AIDS, TB and malaria, and why that pledge of £1.8 billion over the next replenishment cycle is so badly, badly needed. If you've already met your MP, thank you. I hope you felt energized from that meeting, or at least ready to keep on pushing. And to figure out where to from here in terms of what next. The replenishment conference is not until September, so we have plenty of time to keep doing that triangulating and keep pushing right to the finish line. You know, maybe there'll be something there. There'll certainly be other actions that we can take, e-actions, media actions, reaching out, socials, friends, family, and so on. Hopefully everything you need this month, from information on the Global Fund, its financial ask, the guides, ideas for taking action, all of that is in this month's action materials. So look for that. Still loads of links that you can follow to get all the details. And as always, please do share your successes with us and with each other. It's good night from me. Goodbye for now, and look forward to seeing you again at the next Grassroots conference call. That's going to be the Tuesday, the 7th of June. That's after our next bank holiday weekend. Enjoy the rest of your evenings, everybody.